What do you think about money and happiness? Does money really buy happiness? Does wisdom buy happiness? Does the combination of money and wisdom buy happiness? What does buy happiness? Can you be happy? We're going through the book of Ecclesiastes with the Song of Solomon, the man who had everything, and we're learning some valuable insights. Good morning, I'm Pastor Rini, Senior Pastor of Valley Christian Center. Welcome to 747 Morning Inspiration. Glad you joined me. And this is an interesting study. I'm enjoying it very much. Make sure you hit the like button on this video, share it with a friend, so we can go through the Bible together in a year and learn some valuable concepts about how to walk with Jesus and live a life that is abundant, which is what Jesus promised those of us who follow him. A life abundant. So, Ecclesiastes chapter 6. Let me begin with verse 1. Let's hear what the King Solomon is saying. There is an evil that I have seen under the sun, and it lies heavy on mankind. A man to whom God gives wealth, possessions, and honor, so he lacks nothing at all that he desires. Yet God does not give him the power to enjoy them, but a stranger enjoys them. So he's talking about the fact that you can spend all your time with all earning income, incredible wealth, and for Solomon's sake, running an empire, and the only ones who enjoy the benefits of all your hard labor are those people who don't have your responsibility. So he's making it clear that sometimes the responsibility of managing an empire, managing wealth, robs you of the joy of actually enjoying the benefits of having that position. And Solomon, of course, felt it, and he was creating this massive empire. And every time he married a new wife and brought in a new concubine and overcame another one of his adversaries and made them, a kind of a partner with him, then he had more people to manage. So he didn't get to enjoy all the money, all the wealth, all the power. He was too busy managing his empire. It says in Matthew 6:24, we are warned about this. No, Jesus said, no one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. But you cannot serve both God and money. At the end of the day, what are we made for? What is our purpose? Why are we made? Why did God create us? What is our destiny? If it's only to make money, then someone else is going to end up enjoying that money. But if it is to serve God and to live life abundantly, then there is a balance to that calling, so we may enjoy the fruits of our toil. He says in verse 9, it is better is the sight of the eyes than the wandering of the appetite. This also is vanity and striving after the wind. He's saying it is better to enjoy the little that you have than the things you don't have. It is much more enjoyable, and you're much more at peace when you actually enjoy what you have in front of you than always searching for what you cannot have or what you think you need to have. It's very true. It's like you forget sometimes the joy of being married until your spouse is gone, the joy of having children till they're grown up and they're away from home. This is why grandparents love their grandkids so much. You're so busy earning an income when your kids are younger, sometimes you forget the joy of actually raising them, and you realize that when you get older, and so you really invest heavily in your grandkids. Well, Solomon is starting to feel the regrets of all this, which is why he speaks so much about life is vain, the vanity of life. Now, chapter 7, he gives some quips, some proverbs, some one-liners, and they all have value. And remember, I think Solomon was going through a time of depression, and so it's important to note that when he wrote these things, a lot of it was very negative. But I think Solomon really was struggling with his personal depression and maybe the 5 stages of grief, as he was realizing his life has been more about storing up an abundance of wealth, and others are going to enjoy it. Let me start in verse 1 of chapter 7. He says, a good name is better than precious ointment, in the day of death than the day of birth. It is better to go out to the house of mourning than to the house of feasting. For this is the end of all mankind, and the living will lay it to heart. And he says in verse 3 and 4, sorrow is better than laughter, for by sadness of face the heart is made glad. The heart of the wise is in the house of the mourning, but the heart of the fools is in the house of mirth. So it is literally talking about what we call the 5 stages of grief. Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And this, what he's saying is, I think is, there is a grieving process that we must go through in order to be restored in our heart. And so I think he was in that place in the 5 stages of grief of really analyzing his life. The fact that he had married 300 women, had 700 concubines, and just we began to lose his joy of living. And so he was going through a time of grief, and he's trying to express that in words to everybody. Maybe you've had a loss, maybe something has happened with you, and you do sometimes have to have that time of grieving in order to get over it, to go to a place of recovery. You can't live in grief, but you can't also deny those stages of grief as you go from loss to recovery. Let's look at a few more of his little quips. Verse 11, wisdom is good with an inheritance, an advantage to those who see the sun. For the protection of wisdom is like the protection of money. And the advantage of knowledge is that the wisdom preserves the life of him who has it. And verse 14, in the day of prosperity be joyful. In the day of adversity consider. God has made the one as well as the other, so that man may not find out anything that will be after him. So he's basically saying what Paul said about money. Paul said in Philippians, I know how to be brought low, I know how to abound. In any and every circumstance I've learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger, abundance and need. I can do all things through him who strengthens me. So wisdom is good because when you receive anything, whether it's money or property or any kind of benefit, wisdom helps you manage it wisely. It doesn't cause you to be tripped up. They say the average person, when they receive an inheritance, spends the inheritance within the first year and usually goes in debt because they did not earn it. The average lottery winner loses all their money within 2 years and again goes wildly in debt. When you don't earn it, you don't protect it. Wisdom helps you take what you have and preserve it and use it to bring a joyful experience, not destruction and death. And then he has a couple quips about unforgiveness and anger. Verse 21, do not take to heart all the things that people say, lest you hear your servant cursing you. Your heart knows that many times you yourself have cursed others. We talked yesterday in church about having a contrite spirit, about confession, about how dangerous it is to hold unforgiveness against others, especially in a world where much of the words used against you, you can do nothing about. Much of it's on social media, much of it's out of your reach. All you can do is manage yourself by forgiving them and not holding anything against them because it only poisons you. Unforgiveness is like you taking a poison hoping it kills someone else. It just kills you instead. So he says, what do you care what people say about you? You've said things about other people. Just deal with it and move on. He has a whole section about the struggles he's had with women because he's had so many and he's lost the joy of having a love of his life. He says in verse 25, I turned my heart to know and search out and seek wisdom, the scheme of things, to know the wickedness of folly and the foolishness that is madness. And I find something more bitter than death, the woman whose heart is snares and nets, and whose hands are fetters. And he who pleases God escapes her, but the sinner is taken by her. Behold, this is what I found, says the preacher, while adding one thing to another to find the scheme of things, which my soul has sought repeatedly. but I have found none. One man among 1,000 I have found, but a woman among all these I have not found. See, this alone I found, that God made man upright, but they have sought out many schemes. So what he's saying is, he's married so many women, he doesn't even know what love is anymore. And quite frankly, it has become just a way of having access to his wealth. And so he created this personal nightmare by embracing all these women as his wives and concubines, and in it lost the meaning of God's value of the covenant of a man and a woman in marriage. And finally, Jesus showed the joy and benefits of sacrifice for God's glory. I want to jump from Solomon to what Jesus said to wrap up today's message. Jesus said this in Matthew 16:24-26. This is something that Solomon could have learned from Jesus. Then Jesus told his disciples, "If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever would save his life will lose it. Whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. For what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and forfeits his soul? Or what shall a man give in return for his soul?" So what Jesus is saying is, having everything isn't as fun as it seems. Maybe a better life is to choose something you're willing to sacrifice for, to give up for. Choose something that you say, you know what, I'm willing to give up my personal pleasures, to say no to my body and yes to my spirit, as I said yesterday in our sermon about fasting and sacrifice. Fasting is saying to your body, you are not the boss of me. Well, Jesus has given us some words of wisdom, and Solomon has showed us what happens when you have everything and nothing is left for your desire. It makes you selfish, it makes you miserable, it makes you depressed, and it makes you think that death is better than life. Hope that helps you today. If you like this video, hit the like button right there and share this video with someone. And let's continue to go through the Bible together in a year. Love you all. See you tomorrow morning at 7:47. See you then.